they actually lived on the continent of Lemuria about 14,500 years ago, coming from another planet called Arima X3. They came here about 300,000 or 250,000 years ago. So when they first came to Earth, they landed on the northwestern corner of the continent of Lemuria, where a small group of Chinese people lived. The Chinese people were really suspicious, and they're still very suspicious nowadays. I know I'm Chinese, so I know that for sure. So they had a small fight, a small war with the people from Arima X3. So being very civilized and spiritual, the people from Arima X3 retreated back to the far side of the moon, where they built ET bases as a transfer station to move their people onto the continent of Lemuria, where they established a very mature and advanced civilization. And they had a lot of great technologies in which they kept secret from the rest of the people in the world. They also colonized certain areas on Earth, such as the Mayas, were actually the people from Lemuria that colonized the locals in North America. They also colonized certain people in India. So that's why there are some legends in India and also like some parts of Southeast Asia that there were chariots of fire in the sky.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
It's my great pleasure to welcome Samuel Chong to the Exopolitics Today, and he's going to tell us about a very interesting book, the Thiaoouba Prophesy. So welcome, Samuel, to the show.
Thank you for having me here, Michael.
Now, first of all, the Thiaoouba Prophecy, I mean, how do you pronounce that?
Thiaoouba or Thiaoouba, depending on how it is pronounced in different languages.
Thiaoouba. Okay, well, we'll go with Thiaoouba. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Now, your background, I believe you're based in Los Angeles and you worked there as a court interpreter and translator. So how did you end up in Los Angeles and work as a court interpreter for, I guess, Mandarin Chinese?
Yes, that's right. I came with my parents to the US in 1993 when I was 15 years old. I always had a fascination about space and also languages. So I studied, even though I studied economics in college, financial analysis in graduate school, I always wanted to really reach out as many people as possible and to help them out to communicate. So I became a Chinese translator and certified court interpreter in California, mainly working with attorneys and doctors.
Okay, great. So this book, the Thiaoouba Prophecies, I mean, this was published in 1993, around that time. So that's 30 years ago. So when did you get interested in it, and how were you drawn to that book?
I was always interested in UFOs and also unknown and the paranormal since I was in elementary school. So in my subconscious mind, I was looking for a book that could solve all the mysteries in the world. For example, who built the Great Pyramid and what really happens in the Bermuda Triangle? And what about the stories in the Bible? And then in 2014, I found this book on Amazon that really answers all my questions that I had in mind at that time. So that's how I found it.
Now, you had a life-changing experience with the book. So how did that impact you?
Well, the book was really revealing to so many things. But in the postscript, it says there are more incredible things that the author, Michel Demarquet, was not allowed to write in the book. To me, it was really puzzling because so many facts are kind of verifiable facts, and already incredible enough. What's more incredible about it? So that caused me a lot of curiosity and to track the author down. And then after I found the author in Vietnam, and he told me certain things that he wasn't allowed to write in the book, like the secrets. So that really motivated me to really promote the messages in the book and to let as many people know as possible to wake up, in order for them to wake up and to make our world a better world for the future.
So 2014, you buy this book by Michel Demarquet, you read it, and it has this profound impact on you. And you said that there was a lot of evidence, a lot of facts supporting it. So what were some of those facts that you just felt was so compelling that you would like buy tickets and travel to Vietnam to meet with the author?
The most striking fact was that the book, written in 1993, before the age of the internet, especially when the author was in Australia. In Australia, there was no internet back then, and he really never traveled to Japan in his entire lifetime. The book mentions that there's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan, that really connects all the dots in the Bible. Because when you look at the Bible, there's no record of Jesus performing any miracles before the age of 28 or 30. It just seems so bizarre that all of a sudden he was able to do all the things that's mentioned in the New Testaments in the Bible. So that's kind of a fact that the author, as a landscaper, a farmer in Australia, wouldn't have known if it didn't really happen to him. So this is one fact that really struck me. And the other was that there are so many details, such as it mentions the disinfection process that the ETs used after the author, Michel Demarquet, went into their spacecraft. So I did research on the antibacterial and on the effects of blue light, which the ET used on him, which turned out that the Harvard Medical School had a research paper, indicating that certain wavelengths of blue light have antibacterial, antiviral effects. So this is another minuscule fact that could be verified. And also things about the ET bases on the far side of the moon. Remember, the book was written in 1993, and this book, it really explains why there are ET bases on the backside of the moon, who they are, who built them, for what purposes, and also the life forms on Mars. The book says that about 200,000 years ago or 300,000 years ago, there were life forms on Mars. So a lot of evidence that we have now kind of corroborates what's written in the book. And also the fact that the book mentions that the ETs have been monitoring us throughout history, explaining stories in the Bible, such as the destruction of the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, Moses leading the Hebrews out of Egypt, parting the Sea of Reeds, going to Canaan and the Mount Sinai, and also the birth of Jesus and Christ. And also their involvement during World War II, preventing Germany from being the first country to develop the atomic bomb, as well as Project Westford, in which NASA, with the collaboration of MIT, sent hundreds of millions of copper needles into space, but failed. So this book has a lot of this kind of verifiable facts that people can explore further.
Right. Well, a couple of things there that I just wanted to follow up on. One was this tomb of Jesus in Japan. I didn't quite understand how that was a fact that was kind of like supporting the book, and also the stopping Germany from developing atomic bombs during the Second World War. So can you explain what the and we're talking about the extraterrestrials in the Thiaouba prophecies, that they somehow played a role, or exactly how was it that Nazi Germany wasn't allowed or couldn't develop atomic bombs to use in the Second World War?
Right. I should elaborate further. Thank you. The stories of Jesus and Christ was that when Jesus was born, he was indeed born out of Virgin Mary, when the ETs implanted the embryo into the uterus of Virgin Mary, just to show that he was someone extraordinary, and because he was born that way, and to fulfill the prophecy and people's expectations. But because when a person is born that way, when the astral body goes into the embryo, he would have to go through what they call, the Nagas call, the river of oblivion, forgetting everything that he accumulated in his past lives. For example, the knowledge and also what he did in his past lives. So Jesus wasn't able to perform any miracles. He went to India. So some people say Jesus went to India. That's true. And traveled to China with his brother who died in China, younger brother. And then they finally reached Japan and died in Japan at the age of 95. He had 3 daughters. And there's a tomb of Jesus' brother, younger brother, next to Jesus, and people can look up and to verify, because that buried a bundle of his brother's hair. So that's the Jesus who couldn't perform miracles, who died in Japan. So there's a tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan.
Before you get to the German question, because that's going to be really surprising to a lot of people, because I haven't heard of that either, that Jesus actually, after the so-called resurrection or the crucifixion, whatever happened then, traveled to India, then China, and then in Japan, and died in Japan. Because there's a lot of stories about Jesus going to India during the years before he turned 27, those missing years, he went to India. But you're saying that the aliens told Michel Demarquet that after the events in Palestine and Israel, he then traveled to China and Japan.
I should clarify, there are 2 Jesus Christs. So one Jesus, one Christ. So the Jesus who was born out of Virgin Mary couldn't perform miracles. He went to India, China, and died in Japan. But there's also a Christ made from the ETs who had one of the Thiaoubans who took on the body of Jesus, made by the ETs, because they can do a lot of things. They can actually make a adult human body in about 24 hours. So the astral body of the Thiaoubans went into the body of Jesus, made by the ETs, made by the Thiaoubans, just to be like the Jesus that went to Japan. Because his astral body contained all the knowledge of performing all the miracles. It was that Christ who preached all the teachings in the New Testaments of the Bible. He died on the cross and then resurrected 3 days after, just to show people that there is life after death and there is reincarnation. But somehow the concept of reincarnation was removed by the Bible. by the Catholic churches from the Bible. So one Jesus, one Christ, one who couldn't perform miracles and died in Japan, one who performed all the miracles, preached the teachings of Christ as documented in the New Testaments, and then who died on the cross and resurrected 3 days after. So 2 beings.
Okay, and you say that there was a tomb found in Japan that was dedicated to this second Jesus that traveled to Japan and died there at the end of his life.
Yes, actually it will be the first Jesus, the Jesus born out of Virgin Mary, who died in Japan, yes.
Okay. And so he traveled through China as well. So is this one of the things that, because I know Christianity is very popular in China. I think there's close to 100 million Christians in China. So is this one of the things that the Chinese believe, that Jesus actually traveled through China when he was alive?
Well, so far as I know, this book is the only book that talks about it. So far, a lot of Chinese people read this book and believe that what's written in the book is to be true, including some of the Christians in China. One thing I like to emphasize is that when Jesus, as documented in the Bible, when Jesus saw his mother, he didn't call his mother mother. He called his mother woman. I mean, I studied a lot of different languages. I'm a linguist, and there's not any language in the world that would call someone's mother woman, because mother and son have a very special relationship. So this is kind of, to me, one of the evidence that shows that Jesus and Christ are two different beings.
Okay, and this second Jesus, or this, you have the original Jesus, and then you have this second, the Christ, as you call him, who did all the miracles.
Yes.
Now that Christ was created from the body of the original Jesus, are we talking about a cloned being that then went on to do all the miracles?
They didn't use the word clone because they can actually make a new body of Jesus. It's out of cosmic rays, because it also explains, some people say, who comes first, like chicken or egg? It's the cosmic rays that can make the objects that appear, manifest different objects. So they used cosmic rays to make a body that resembles the body of Jesus. And then the astral body of one of the Thiaoubans went inside of the body of Jesus, that's made by the ETs, and then began preaching, because he remembered everything, remembered the knowledge to perform miracles.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. So you also said that the Thiaoouba prophecy has information about why Nazi Germany wasn't able to use a nuclear bomb?
Yes. I mean, at that time, there was certain evidence that Germany was also developing an atomic weapon, atomic bomb. They were actually ahead of the US at that time. But then, because the Thiaoubans, the ET that could see about what's going to happen in the future, and they believed that if Germany was allowed to be able to deploy the atomic bomb, there would have been like 3 times as more death as if the US did it. So they kind of used their technology and ability to prevent Germany from doing so. I did some research. There was a German scientist called Heisenberg, and he really was in charge of the project. But then, for some reason, he made a stupid mistake, believing that it would require a lot of plutonium and uranium to develop the atomic bomb. So he wrote a report to Hitler, indicating that it wouldn't be possible to do that, because it would have required a lot of materials that it would be impossible to do so. So after Hitler read the report, and he gave up the plan for the Nazi Germany to really continue the research. So that's why the U.S. government was ahead of the German government in doing the project.
Did the Thiaoubans tell Michel Demarquet anything about what happened to Nazi Germany at the end of the war? Because there are many people that say a faction of the Nazis got away to South America and to Antarctica to set up a secret space program. Others, the mainstream view is, of course, that the Nazi Germany just collapsed, and that was the end of that. So did the Thiaoubans say anything about that?
Well, the Thiaoubans didn't say anything like that. What's interesting about the book is that it reveals a lot of information superficially, and not into great details, because they really want us to do the research and to explore more, to gain knowledge. And also, if there exists knowledge on Earth that turned out to be true, they wouldn't really mention or emphasize that. For example, I think they know that we are on the right track regarding what happened after World War II regarding the Nazi Germans. So I think they really didn't mention that, because we are already on the right path, on the right direction.
Okay, so you read the book, you traveled. You read the book in 2014. You traveled to Vietnam twice to meet with Michel Demarquet. He told you a lot of things that weren't in the book. And at the end, you just felt that this was so important that you would translate the book from English into Mandarin. So, why did you? I mean, I guess, that's a pretty big project. So, why did you feel it was so important for you to do this translation and then have the book published in China and Taiwan?
It's actually more like a promotional work, spreading the messages, because what's not written in the book is so important for our future. Because I would use analogy like the book of Enoch. When Enoch was taken away by God, he was told to write a book. So there came about the book of Enoch. Remember, a few decades later, Noah was told to build an ark. So if Michel Demarquet, after he learned about the book of Enoch, he read it, and he believes that there's so much resemblance, so many things that he could relate to what Enoch described of his trip, and to what Michel Demarquet, the author of Thiaoouba Prophesy, personally experienced. So he believed that Enoch was taken away by the same group of ETs, the Thiaoubans, to their planet. So if you really do the analogy and parallelly, and a few decades later, something would happen. So it really depends on how we respond to the challenges that we are facing nowadays. We need to change our ways of living. We need to mend our ways to the right path. So this is why I've been trying to get the words out to as many people as possible in order for people to wake up, so that they can really look at what's really happening around them. A lot of people tend to be, because I work with a lot of doctors and lawyers and those kind of professionals, they tend to believe in the mainstream media a lot. So I really want them to wake up to see if they really want to rely on the mainstream media, the narratives of what the government is trying to tell us. Because there are certain things that really don't appear to be what the government is trying to tell us. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the last few years, you're going to see that a lot of people are silenced by the mainstream media, including some licensed medical doctors in the US. And I think people need to really go further and to see how they should respond to such situations once they know that the government or certain people have been lying to us.
So with the Thiaoubans, I mean, they have all this information. They're sharing that with Michel Demarquet, and he believes that they are the same ETs that is described in the Book of Enoch. So, I mean, it does sound like there are similarities, but that was really one of the major things that kind of motivated you to translate the book, that you kind of felt that Michel was like a reincarnation of Enoch?
Not necessarily reincarnation of Enoch, but he had the same mission as Enoch had, was just to write a book to warn people. This book is really not a book of prophecy. This is actually a book of warnings from the friendly ETs to us, telling us we should really wake up and to change our ways of living and to respond to the certain things that the government or a small group of people, special interest groups, have been trying to impose on us. And because we really decide on our own future, the future is changeable depending on our actions. The past is fixed, but the future can change to the direction for the better if we really act on it. So this is the information that I've been trying to tell us.
So the book is translated into Chinese and then becomes a bestseller in China and in
Taiwan.
Taiwan. So, I mean, why is it a rare thing? How come that was a surprise to you?
Well, to me, it's I mean, I was expecting this book to be a bestseller in China and Taiwan because this is a unique book, especially given the fact in the last few decades, there hasn't been a lot of good books on the ETs or spirituality in China. And in Taiwan is mainly due to the promotion of social media, because certain social influencers talked about this book on YouTube, and also some of the other social media platforms, and caused a lot of people to have the opportunity to know about this book. What's really surprising to me is that in the US, there hasn't been a lot of people who really paid much attention to this book yet. So this is where I come in. I'm trying to spread the words and spread the messages, and to do the best I can to let more people know about it.
Very interesting. I think a lot of people would be kind of like questioning the Chinese government. I mean, it's a communist government. Did they in any way try to repress the book, or were they okay with the book getting out? Because I know in China, the authorities there are very sensitive about books that bring up kind of religious, spiritual topics, that if they become too successful, then they can step in. So, you know, was this book just something that was kind of like somehow it just popped up and got people's attention, and they just let it do that?
Well, there are two reasons. One is that this book is still under the radar of the Chinese government in charge of censorship, because those people don't read any books on spirituality or religion. And the second, which is the main reason, this book was published in mainland China as a science fiction. So people can just say this is a novel, like a fictional story. So nothing to worry about it. This is the reason. Yeah.
Okay, yep, very, very smart.
Yeah.
So I guess the central element in Michel Demarquet's book is that he traveled to the planet Thiaouba and spent some time there. So first of all, you know, where is it? Where is this planet? And how long did he stay there?
It is in our galaxy. The exact location wasn't told to Michel Demarquet, but it took him about almost a day to reach there, even traveling at the speed a few times faster than the speed of light, and also using teleportation when they were in deep space. Because according to this book, they could only do that when they're in deep space, otherwise it would explode. And also, this planet called Thiaouba is a very beautiful planet that from far away, it looks like a golden planet, a planet surrounding like golden mists. And it's very beautiful. It's like a paradise or heaven-like planet to Michel Demarquet, the author.
Well, that's very interesting, the golden planet. Now, I know that some comparisons were made between the Thiaoubans and the Anunnaki as described in ancient historical texts, and that Michel was told that the red-headed giants in human history were in fact the Thiaoubans. So can you like elaborate on that?
Well, the Thiaoubans or Thiaoubans, they are like 9 or 10 foot tall, beautiful, blonde, compassionate, loving ETs that look like Nordic people, but they can perform all the miracles as performed by Jesus Christ, as documented in the Bible. They could levitate, they could materialize or manifest objects, they could use telepathy to communicate with Michel Demarquet. They can see the human energy field or auras. They can resurrect the dead. They can heal people, and they can do all the things that's what we would think to be supernatural. Michel Demarquet spent about 9 days on their planet, and he had a wonderful experience. He didn't want to come back. He was really sad when he learned that he had to come back and write a book. And it's just until his passing, until his death, he was always looking forward for the Thiaoubans to take him back to their planet because it's just so surreal to him and so beautiful and comfortable when he was living on the planet.
So what did he see on the planet? I mean, 9 days is a long time to spend on a planet. So, what kind of things did he see? I mean, how did the Thiaoubans live, and, explain how they're hermaphrodites?
Yes, they're hermaphrodites. They communicate with each other using telepathy. They have a very unique form of traveling using like two devices to travel at the speed about 300 miles an hour. So they have anti-gravitational technologies, and they live in what they call a doko, in which when people are outside, they cannot see inside, but when people enter inside, they can see outside. It's like semi-transparent. What they eat like special form of food made of powders that releases calories at a very slowly pace, very slow speed, so that they don't have to eat for about 2 days or so. And they meditate a lot, and their role, according to this book, is to guide people, for example, people on Earth, to the right direction. Because according to them, there are a total of 9 different categories of planet in the universe. They live on category 9 planet, which is to be our mentor. And we live on category 1 planet, which is the lowest category. We are like elementary school students, and we are constantly learning new things, experimenting different things like the atomic weapon and also different things. So their role is to guide us, as they did throughout history. As I mentioned previously, the stories in the Bible are just some of the things that they did. And so this is what Michel Demarquet observed. And certainly during his trip and also while on their planet, he did many other things, such as learning about the history of Earth, where all the people came from, like the yellow people, black people, Caucasian people, and the Jewish people. And he was told a lot of important information, such as the meaning of life, which is to learn spiritual lessons through our physical experiences. Because when God created us, it inserted a tiny portion of itself to each one of us. So we can connect to God on our own by meditating, or by having a good night of sleep, or by doing prayers. And so he was told a lot of different things. And also he was told about the ancient civilizations, such as Lemuria, a continent that existed about 14,500 years ago in the Pacific Ocean. It also explains why there are statues on the Easter Island, the Moas. And also he was led to his past lives. He had 80 past lives already, and he briefly visited each of his past lives. And there are many things that he personally experienced according to this book.
Well, one of the kind of questions I have, and I guess a lot of people would have the same, is, well, how do hermaphrodites reproduce?
Okay. They can reproduce at their own will. For example, because they're hermaphrodites, they can control their population. So they decide when to have a baby, and they have sexual pleasures as well. And they can, whenever they need to, they can just have sexual pleasures on their own without having to have another partner. So they can also regenerate their body. So this is why the Thiaoouban, this group of ETs, they always look like in their 30s. They never age, because they can regenerate like all the things that they want to. For example, when they're kind of having wrinkles, they can just make the wrinkles disappear, something like that. So they're highly advanced ETs. So that's why Michel Demarquet really didn't want to come back.
Interesting. Well, I know there was this comparison made with the Anunnaki and the Nephilim, and of course, in the historical texts, whether we're talking the Book of Enoch or the Book of Genesis, they talk about the the fallen angels and the Nephilim as kind of like reproducing sexually, where they bred with the women. So how would that work with hermaphrodites?
This book doesn't mention anything like that. Doesn't mention anything about the fallen angels.
Okay.
So it really is not. It is really not consistent with the Book of Enoch in that sense. So it makes me wonder whether, like some of the stories or some of the description in the Book of Enoch were kind of grafted from other legends. But if you think reasonably and logically, hermaphrodites, there's no need for them to have our women and to have babies that are kind of half human beings, half the fallen angels. So I think that part of the story is really inconsistent, at least to what this book describes.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned some of the advanced technologies that the Thiaoubans had. Now, did they kind of share that with Michel Demarquet in terms of like, okay, these are some of the technologies and maybe your civilization can build them or you can help build them? Or were they really just interested in giving him kind of philosophy and moral teachings?
There are two technologies that the Thiaoubans specifically asked Michel Demarquet to look into. One is the camera that can capture the human energy field. Because according to them, once you are able to do that, you're able to tell whether a person is well-intended or has ill intentions. And also it's good for our spiritual growth because we are able to tell whether which areas we need to improve on spiritually. So this is one technology they're really asking us to focus on. And the other is to really incorporate colors, the importance of colors. Because on their planet, Michel Demarquet had to wear facial masks to filter, sunglasses, to filter out the colors and the lights because they're just too strong for him. According to the Thiaoubans, colors are extremely important because they are a form of vibration. So when you think about it, Nikola Tesla also emphasizes the importance of energy, frequency, and vibrations. So they say that there are some studies done on Earth about the importance and effects of colors, such as the pink color would reduce the muscle weight by 30% when one sees the color for about 15 minutes or so. And then the blue color blue has antibacterial, antiviral effects. And there are other colors that have certain effects that we can really incorporate in our daily life. So they're saying that we should do that so that we don't need to rely on pharmaceutical drugs such as aspirin or some of the more expensive drugs that the big pharma has been developing. It also talks about the importance of not being in an environment that has a lot of noise, because noise damages our astral body, our electrons in the astral body. It also says that we need to really focus on some of the things that we should be aware of, such as the dangers on Earth. Number one being money. Number two, politicians. Number three, drugs and journalists. Number four, religions. So we should be aware of them and really to respond to certain things that we see in our lives.
Okay, very good. So the key then for this book are the prophecies. So I mean, that's the Thiaouba prophecies. So what are the key prophecies that are made that kind of like got your attention and maybe are relevant to people today?
Well, the word prophecy for this book is really a misnomer because it really doesn't contain any prophecies. What it tells us is that we decide our future because the future is changeable depending on how we respond to certain situations. even the Thiaoubans themselves cannot see 100 years ahead of time. They can only predict what's going to happen within 100 years or so. So in that sense, it's really not a book of prophecy, it's a book of warnings. It really wants us to act together in a concerted fashion against the injustice, the tyranny in the world. It really gives us a solution. It's just to imitate what Gandhi did in India, using nonviolent resistance to act together against really the small group of people or the special interest groups that control the government.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yep. So book of warnings. So in terms of some of the ancient history that was described, I mean, you mentioned, I think that it was over 1 million years old in terms of human civilization on Earth, and they described that. Now, one of the things that kind of like really interested me was it was mentioned that Australia is the original sacred land. So a lot of people think that life began in Africa. So why is it that the Thiaoubans were saying that life actually began in Australia? And was that what began 1.3 million years ago?
Yes, about 1.35 million years ago, two groups of people came on Earth from a planet called Baccaratini. One group was the yellow race of people, the Chinese ancestors, and the other group was the black people, the ancestors of Aboriginals in Australia and also people in Africa. The black people landed in Australia, and the yellow people landed in what's today Myanmar. And over the years of time, a group of black people separated themselves from their other from the group of from their own people in Australia. So they went to Africa. So out of the black people, so one group separated from another and went to Africa. So I think that's where some people believe that the earliest people came from Africa. There are a lot of interesting details as written in the book that says that in Africa, they were really led by this group of like clergy or evil priests that really enslaved them, and that caused the Thiaoubans or the ETs to be involved in saving the rest of the black people in Africa. And then since then, they were highly spiritual, and they were able to perform a lot of psychic supernatural abilities, such as using telepathy to communicate with each other and levitation. So this is why there are some groups in Africa, like black people in Africa, like the tribal groups, that they could communicate with each other. They can still communicate with each other using telepathy. So I think that's what happened, according to this book.
So did the book describe different waves of extraterrestrial civilizations coming in and bringing in, the white people, the red people, the brown people, and so forth?
Yes. So the yellow people and the black people came first. The Caucasian people came after. So they landed on the continent of Atlantis, that was also destroyed later by natural causes. The book doesn't say that. The continent of Lemuria was destroyed by natural causes because of an earthquake, but it doesn't really say about Atlantis, which existed a long time ago. And the Hebrews, the Jewish people, came from a different planet called Hebra, about 11 or 12,000 years ago. And the Jewish people are really different from the rest of the people on Earth at that time, because they originally came from a Category 3 planet by accident. The rest of us, all came from a Category 1 planet. So that's why this book explains why the Jewish people were the chosen people, according to the Bible.
Okay, well, I know we have ancient texts. I mean, the Bible talks about Adam. The Sumerian texts talk about Adapa. So who was the first man on Earth according to the Thiaoubans?
the black people and the yellow people.
I see. Okay.
They were
So they're talking not about an individual man, they're talking about a race.
Right, it's a race, because when the black people and yellow people came in the very beginning, they brought lots of people. I forgot the exact number, but a lot of people. But the Jewish people, on the other hand, when they landed on Earth about 11 or 12,000 years ago, there were only about 7 astronauts. And then 4 of them died. So they only left about 3 of them, like 1 man, 2 women. So that actually was the ancestors of the Jewish people on Earth. So 3 people, according to this book, 3 Jewish people of the Jewish race.
Okay, but but the book doesn't say that this was like Adam and Eve.
Well, it says that Adam and Eve, those were probably a slightly kind of inconsistent to what really happened to the ancestors of the Jewish people on Earth.
So you mentioned Lemuria, Easter Island, and Mu. Is Mu and Lemuria different? I always thought that Lemuria was this continent in the middle of the Pacific that disappeared, and that was Lemuria, and Mu was a ancient civilization on the kind of like in that area of China, Vietnam, Cambodia, and so forth. So yeah, did the Thiaoubans talk about Mu and Lemuria being different, or were they the same?
According to this book, they're the same. Lemuria and Mu, they're the same thing. They actually lived on the continent of Lemuria about 14,500 years ago, coming from another planet called Arima X3. They came here about 300,000 or 250,000 years ago. So when they first came to Earth, they landed on the northwestern corner of the continent of Lemuria, where a small group of Chinese people lived. The Chinese people were really suspicious, and they're still very suspicious nowadays. I know I'm Chinese, so I know that for sure. So they had a small fight, a small war with the people from Arima X3. So being very civilized and spiritual, the people from Arima X3 retreated back to the far side of the moon, where they built ET bases as a transfer station to move their people phase by phase, and also materials as well, onto the continent of Lemuria, where they established a very mature and advanced civilization. So they built a great pyramid on the continent of Lemuria, in their capital called Casanova, which is located in the northwestern corner of that continent. And the pyramid is actually 3 times as large as a pyramid in Egypt. And they had a lot of great technologies in which they kept secret from the rest of the people in the world. They also colonized certain areas on Earth, such as the Mayas, were actually the people from Lemuria that colonized the locals in North America. They also colonized certain people in India. So that's why there's some legends in India, and also like some parts of Southeast Asia, that there were chariots of fire in the sky.
So as far as the information in the book about the far side of the moon and Mars having colonies and so forth, can you maybe elaborate on what exactly they said and how that can be corroborated in any way with what modern science has found, or what others, or what we know about the far side of the moon and Mars?
Yes. Far side of the moon, the far side of the moon was actually a ET base originally built by the people from Arima X3 that actually migrate themselves from their planet to Earth on the continent of Lemuria, because they had an issue of overpopulation on their original planet. So they migrated some people from their planet onto Earth through the ET bases on far side of the moon. And we know that the US government went to the moon about 50 years ago and never went back. And there's a reason for that. They did see certain things that was not revealed to the public. They were warned off from the moon because we are not ready. We were not ready. We are still not ready to explore the universe. Because we are still having wars and we are not spiritually mature enough to make a peaceful exploration in the universe. Because we are just always thinking about getting more minerals and technologies and also material wealth from or technologies from our ET friends. So we are not ready. So that's why we were warned off from the moon. And if we try to explore the universe again, for example, of going to Mars or try to land on the moon again with an astronaut, that's not going to happen. Because using analogy, when you see two groups of monkeys fighting against each other in a jungle in Africa, would you want to invite them to your beautiful mansion? They're going to make a mess, a big mess. So you wouldn't want to do that. You would prevent them from going to your beautiful house. So this is us, just like the monkeys I just described. So this is the far side of the moon. In terms of life forms on Mars, so when the people from Arimo X3 explored where to migrate to, they saw that on Mars, there were people there who were highly spiritual, even though they didn't have a lot of technologies. They were kind of living a very peaceful or harmonious way. And the resources on Mars were scarce, so they wouldn't support the new migrants from those people. But then also another important reason for them to explore Earth was that Mars was a dying planet, so the core was cooling down. So when a planet's core cools down, it wouldn't have the electromagnetic force that can capture the atmosphere. So without the atmosphere, there's no oxygen, so life forms wouldn't be able to sustain themselves on the planet, and the planet would become like a desert. So this is what happened to Mars. And so that's why right now there are no life forms on Mars anymore, because the planet is already dead.
Well, I know there'll be many people that take issue with this idea that Mars is uninhabited or that the civilizations ended a long time ago, because there have been quite a number of people that say that they have either traveled to Mars or they have access records talking about Mars having multiple civilizations today, and that there are secret space programs based on Mars. So I'm sure a lot of people would be kind of puzzled as to why, if Michel Demarquet was getting accurate information, why he wasn't told this.
Right. I know there are some people who say there are secret space programs, and I know some people who say that they travel to Mars. This is inconsistent with what Michel Demarquet believed when he was alive. And according to Michel Demarquet, the Thiaoubans are capable of doing a lot of different things, such as projecting an image onto him, making him believe that certain things happened in a holographic form. So my personal belief that I would like to consider both sides of the story and to see which side of the story can provide specific verifiable facts that can be proven on Earth by people like the public, and to see if there are any real world implications as well. I would ask both people to provide us many facts or specific evidence as possible, so that we can determine whether to reconcile the stories or to make a determination to see what really is going on in the world. Because there are a lot of things that are just either hidden by the government or hidden by a small group of people.
Well, that's exactly right. There's a lot that has been suppressed, and there are a lot of ancient records as well that talk about the Anunnaki being on Earth, and so there's been some kind of scientific studies done on places like the Mars, looking at the atmosphere, kind of like detecting traces of atomic radiation there, suggesting there were nuclear wars and so forth. So I know there's going to be a lot of people that kind of question whether or not that's accurate, and I agree that we got to look at all sources and not just kind of like depend on one source. But certainly the information in the Thiaouban prophecies is very interesting. Now, when it comes to the far side of the moon, you talk about ETs there, these ARIMA X3s that set up a base there on the far side of the moon. Now, a lot of people that watch my channel will be very familiar with the presence of grey extraterrestrials from the Orion constellation, or reptilians from Draco, from Alpha Draconis, setting up bases on the far side of the moon to better infiltrate and control the Earth. So, again, I guess Michel Demarquet didn't talk about the Greys, the Draconians, and he just talked about this one group there, and that's it.
Well, he talked about the Greys and also other races of ETs. And also, I have some information regarding the reptilians as well. Well, maybe a little bit different from what other people believe. So regarding the Greys, in 1995, Michel Demarquet received a telepathic message from Tao, the Thiaouban, who was his main contact, that he could reveal publicly what was going on with the Greys. According to the message he received, the Greys were a group of ETs from category 1 planet, similar to the category or the same category of Earth. So they implanted devices on people on Earth, about 150 or so by the year 1995, to monitor us, how we respond to our increasingly decreased immune system, because we have had the problem since 1948. They did so because they were also having the same problem. So they are a dying race. So they wanted to see how we respond to the situation that they have been experiencing, and to learn from us. And I know that the government, the US government, has been getting technologies from the Greys and studying them. And I would say that if you really want to learn from the ETs, learn from the best. Learn from a category 9 planet, ET or inhabitants, not from the Greys, who are like also kind of dying, and they're not that much advanced from us, at least in a spiritual level. Regarding the other races of ETs, Michel Demarquet saw on Thiaouba about 147 different corps of different ETs in our galaxy alone, floating in a golden doco, like a golden structure, building structure. And he was told that there are other planets of different categories in just in our galaxy, and they have been visiting us as well, but they don't intervene or they don't interfere with our lives, because their role is just coming as an observant. They are not really encouraged or allowed to intervene with our own affairs, because we should learn to resolve our own issues so that we can get the most out of our lives. So regarding the reptilians, I know some people say that reptilians are evil kind of ETs, maybe control the Illuminati. I was very fortunate to be able to translate another book from German into English about the autobiography of the highest degree of the chair of a secret society that was founded in Germany. And I found out later that it was indeed the Illuminati. In that book, it describes all the initiation processes of how one can become a member of the Illuminati, and also the supernatural abilities or the supernatural powers of the high degree members of the Illuminati. They could levitate, they could do a lot of mind control, they can do a lot of terrible things. They have a lot of very graphic, violent, and torturous rituals that they do to others, such as eating the heart of a person who just died. So a lot of terrible things like that. And according to this author, the book that I translated from German to English, called 334 Lies, Lies, the members of the high degree members of the Illuminati all have this kind of supernatural abilities and powers to influence people's mind. They can also materialize and manifest objects. They can influence the politicians. But they're human beings themselves. This corroborates with a Dutch banker called Ronald Bernard, who used to work for the members of the Illuminati, who personally witnessed one member of the Illuminati killing another person just using his mind. So this, and he believes, this is what Ronald Bernard believes. He believes that what people say are the reptilians are actually just people who really saw the rituals and supernatural powers performed by the high degree members of the Illuminati. So, and I would say that just reasonably, and people can just deduct certain things or certain information knowledge from this book, is that if they warned us from the moon, prevented us from exploring the universe, they would also prevent other evil ET races with evil intentions from invading us or coming with us or coming to mess our own affairs. They would do the same thing onto those kind of ETs. So I think the reptilians are probably some of the legends, and also the Michel Demarquet also says that some people do believe in reptilians, and it's okay for them to believe in that, and people just need to really look at the facts and reach their own conclusions.
Well, you mentioned that there are these 9 levels of kind of civilizational development, Earth, humanity being at level 1 and the Thiaoubans being at level 9. Now, you also mentioned, or we're talking about Michel Demarquet, you're just kind of like relaying what the contents of the book were. So Michel Demarquet was told that there were also these different extraterrestrial groups that brought different kind of colored peoples here, whether it was the blacks, whether it was the yellow, the white, the red, and so forth. Now, I know some describe the extraterrestrials that brought the different species of humanity here as the seeders, or as the founders or guardians, that these are extraterrestrials that create genetic experiments on different planets and move them around depending on what's happening with that planet, using giant space arcs and so forth. So are we to understand then that the Thiaoubans are themselves not one of the seeder races, that they are kind of like more a galactic observer, if you like?
Right. They're not one of the seeders. They're kind of our mentors or guardians. to really direct us to the right direction, the direction of spirituality or spiritual growth, as they did in the ancient history in our past. And I think there are stories about ET races bringing people here, but according to this book, the black people and the yellow people came on their own because their own planet, Baccaratini, was dying off. So their own planet was cooling down. So they had to migrate. So they migrated to Earth. So did the Caucasians too.
Okay, so you have migrations of different peoples to Earth, and not necessarily because there was another group of extraterrestrials, whether we call them seeders, starting a genetic experiment here, but these were like refugees finding their way to Earth for safety and colonization. Because generally speaking, there are a number of people that talk about roughly 22 to 24 different extraterrestrial civilizations that have seeded humanity, and that around the Earth we have around 22 variations in terms of human species. So just to clarify, the Thiaoubans are not part of that group of 22 or 24 civilizations. They're kind of outside, just observing all of this.
That's correct. In fact, this book also mentions about the Middle Easterns and also North Africans being a mixed race between the Caucasians and the black people, and also the yellow people, the Chinese, the yellow race of people. So they're kind of a mixed blood people. And for the Cedars theory or concept, I don't have a lot of knowledge, and it is not mentioned by Michel Demarquet or in the book. So I would have to look more into that.
Well, I know today, a lot of people are very interested in these extraterrestrial organizations like the Galactic Federation of Worlds, the Andromeda Council, Ashtar Command, the Intergalactic Confederation. So, one question will be, is this group, the Thiaoubans, a member of one of those organizations?
Well, I can say that according to this, the Thiaoubans live on a Category 9 planet, which is one of the 3 Category 9 planets in our galaxy. So their role has been to lead us, and sometimes when necessary to intervene, like destroying the 2 cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, and leading Moses out of Egypt, and having Jesus and Christ born here and appear here. And so they have been heavily involved in our affairs throughout history. So in my mind, I would take the role as a mentor or our guidance and to guide us to the right direction. It really doesn't mention anything about the Galactic Council or Federation. I would say they exist. I would affirm. I would definitely say that they exist. It's just that we would need to have more direct communication or evidence in order to find out more information, like information that we can rely on, relate to, and also verify here.
So my last question is, why do you believe the Thiaoouba Prophecy is relevant today?
Because we are going to encounter a lot of crises in the future down the road, in the next few months, a few years, or even into the future. People need to wake up and not to be really brainwashed by the mainstream media anymore. This book tells us that we really need to have our own independent thinking when it comes to the news we hear, information we receive. We need to wake up and not to rely on any government organization or the politicians or religious, like the clergy. we need to really look inside ourselves for answers, because the kingdom of God is within you. We need to meditate, and we have when we have issues or challenges, we should respond by asking our heart, our intuition, or our gut feelings to see which directions to go. If the solution is good for our spiritual growth, they will be provided to us. So I would really like people to be vigilant to what's happening around them, and to really have independent judgment as to the information they hear and the news that they watch, and to really look at the details and to find out if everything matches to what's resonates in your heart. We are visited, and we have been visited by the ETs throughout history, and we are still being monitored and watched now. I would say that at least this group of ETs, the Thiaoubans, are friendly, compassionate, and loving ETs that are trying to help us to the right path. And this book is actually the best investment I have ever made in my entire life, just by reading it, because it reveals a lot of important information that can help a lot of people. It helped me, it can help you and your family members and your friends. It contains information on how to heal different diseases using, for example, colors and the human energy field. It doesn't cost a lot as long as you have the knowledge. It's really almost a zero cost to me to obtain the information. And I think it's going to be really rewarding to you as well. And I really want to thank everyone for the opportunity for me to speak out, and also thank Dr. Sala for giving me this opportunity to communicate with the audience.
You're welcome, Samuel. So if people want to contact you, where do they go?
They can go to my website, chinasona.org, CHINASONA.org/Thiaouba. That's capital letter T, HIAOOUBA. And people can also find a book on Amazon, Thiaouba Prophesy, and you'll be rewarded by reading this book.
Well, thank you, Samuel, for being on Exopolitics today.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Sala. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Sala. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.